The wind was cold across the valley, and the snow crunched under Hakon's worn boots as he walked into the village. He carried nothing but a small pouch tied to his belt, and inside were 3 coins. Those coins were all he had left, the last remains of a long and difficult season. The harvest had failed, the sea had given little fish, and the strong warriors of the village had already taken most of the good land for themselves. Hakon was not a rich man. He had once dreamed of raiding across seas and bringing back treasures, but his life had been filled with hard work, not glory. Still, he never let despair take his spirit. He believed that even the smallest chance could lead to something greater. That belief carried him forward on this day. As he entered the edge of the village, he saw a cabin leaning to one side near the forest. The roof sagged, and the walls were black with rot. The place looked more like a ruin than a home. Some villagers stood nearby, chopping wood and laughing. When they saw Hakon staring at the broken cabin, they laughed louder. "Are you thinking of buying that old pile of wood?" one of them called out. "Even the crows refuse to sit on its roof." Another villager shook his head. "It will fall with the next strong wind. Only a fool would waste a single coin on it." Hakon listened but did not answer. He walked closer, his son Leif following him. Leif was young, no more than 10 winters, but his eyes were sharp with curiosity. He tugged at his father's arm. "Father, why are we looking at this place?" Leif asked. "It is broken and smells of rot. It cannot be worth anything." Hakon smiled faintly. "Because, my son, value is not always on the surface. Sometimes a man must look deeper. A cabin can be rebuilt. A shelter, even a weak one, is better than nothing. And sometimes the things that look worthless hide something of worth." Leif tilted his head, unsure of his father's meaning. But he trusted him. Hakon had taught him how to hunt, how to mend nets, and how to endure cold nights with courage. If his father saw something in the rotting cabin, then perhaps there was more to it. Hakon approached the owner, an old villager named Brandr, who was sitting on a bench outside his own sturdy house. Brandr laughed when Hakon spoke. "You want to buy that cabin? It is cursed, I tell you. No one has lived there for years. Every man who tried gave up after a few nights. The roof leaks, the floor breaks, and the forest pushes in through the walls. What will you give me for such a burden?" Hakon untied his pouch and opened it. The 3 small coins inside clinked together. They were not much, but they were all he had. "These," Hakon said simply. 3 coins for the cabin." The laughter of the villagers rose again. One man slapped his thigh and shook his head. 3 coins for a pile of rotten wood. The poor Viking has gone mad." But Brandr, seeing the glint of real silver in the pouch, stopped laughing. Though it was little, it was more than he expected anyone to offer for such a ruin. He nodded, still amused but willing. "Very well," Brandr said. "Take it. The cabin is yours for 3 coins. I wash my hands of it. But do not come crying when it collapses on your head." Hakon gave him the coins and bowed his head with respect. The villagers kept laughing, but Hakon did not care. He looked at Leif, who was staring at the cabin with wide eyes. "It is ours now," Hakon said quietly. Leif frowned. "But father, it is broken. How will we live in it?" "We will not live in it yet," Hakon answered. "First, we will see what it hides. Every place has a story. Let us find the story of this cabin." Together they pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the air was damp and heavy. Dust rose with every step. Broken furniture lay scattered on the floor, and cobwebs covered the corners. The roof let in thin lines of light through its holes, and the wooden walls smelled of decay. Leif wrinkled his nose. "It smells like death." Hakon knelt and touched the floor. His strong fingers pressed against the old boards. Some were weak and broke at his touch, but beneath them he felt something solid. He knocked on the ground, and the hollow sound surprised him. "This cabin has secrets," Hakon said. Leif's eyes brightened. He hurried to explore, moving old chairs and lifting piles of straw. The boy was small but quick, and soon he found a corner where the floor seemed uneven. He called for his father. Hakon joined him and pulled aside the debris. Beneath the straw lay a strange box, half buried in the dirt. Its surface was rough with rust, but markings scratched into the metal glimmered faintly in the light. Leif touched it and pulled his hand back. "It is cold, father. But the marks shine like stars." Hakon studied the box in silence. His heart beat faster. He had no idea what it was, but he knew this was not an ordinary cabin. He had trusted his instinct when he bought it, and now it seemed his instinct was right. The laughter of the villagers still echoed outside, but inside the cabin, father and son shared a secret that no one else could see. The ruin had already given them something greater than they had expected. Hakon placed his hand on Leif's shoulder. "Remember this, my son. The world often hides its gifts. Most men look only at what their eyes see. But the wise man looks deeper. What seems worthless can hold the greatest treasure." Leif nodded, his young eyes shining with wonder. He did not know what they had found, but he felt that this moment was the beginning of something far larger than either of them could imagine. And so, with only 3 coins spent, Hakon and Leif stood in a rotting cabin that would soon change their lives forever. The sun had already moved low in the sky when Hakon and Leif returned to the rotting cabin the next morning. The night before, Leif could hardly sleep. His young mind kept returning to the strange box they had uncovered beneath the straw. He imagined it glowing, opening, and revealing secrets hidden for centuries. Hakon too had stayed awake, thinking about what they might have stumbled upon. He was not a man to believe in fairy tales, but the markings on the box were unlike anything he had seen in his years of travel. The villagers watched from a distance as father and son entered the cabin once more. Some shook their heads, still laughing at the foolish Viking who had spent 3 coins on a ruin. Others simply ignored them. But Hakon and Leif did not care. They had no desire for the crowd's approval. They cared only for what lay inside. Leif hurried to the corner where the box had rested. It was still there, rusted and heavy, but no one had touched it through the night. Hakon knelt beside him. Together they tried to lift the box, but it did not move easily. It was far heavier than it looked, as if it held not only metal but something denser inside. "Father, what is inside it?" Leif asked eagerly. "I do not know," Hakon admitted. "But whatever it is, it was meant to be hidden. Look at the way it was buried beneath straw and dirt. Someone wanted it kept away from curious eyes." Leif studied the box again. The strange markings across its surface seemed to catch the light in a way that made them glow faintly. They were not runes of the village, nor any script Hakon had seen in his younger days. The symbols curved and swirled like the paths of stars in the night sky. "Do you think it belonged to raiders from far away?" Leif wondered. "Perhaps," Hakon said, though his heart doubted it. "Or perhaps it is older than even our village." They worked together, pulling the box free from the dirt. At last it shifted, scraping against the floor with a dull sound. Hakon dragged it into the center of the cabin where the light shone down through the holes in the roof. The box had no visible lock, only a seam running along the top. Hakon pressed his hands against it, pushing and prying, but it did not open. Leaf tried with smaller fingers, searching for some hidden latch. Hours passed, and still it remained sealed. Leaf's shoulders sagged. Maybe it is empty. Maybe it is just an old chest. Hakon shook his head. No. Nothing this heavy is empty. And no man carves such markings into an empty chest. He sat back, wiping sweat from his brow, and thought carefully. In his youth, he had seen many kinds of boxes, some locked with keys, some bound with rope, others sealed with tar. But this one was different. It almost seemed alive, as if it was waiting for something before it would allow itself to be opened. Leaf pressed his hand flat against the top, and then something strange happened. The markings glowed brighter beneath his touch. Hakon's eyes widened as faint lines of light spread across the surface, forming shapes that looked like constellations. Leaf pulled his hand back in surprise, and the light faded at once. "Father, did you see that?" Leaf whispered. "I saw," Hakon said slowly. "This is no common chest. It responds to you." Leaf hesitated, then pressed his hand again. Once more the markings lit up, brighter this time, filling the cabin with a pale glow. The seam along the top hissed, and with a soft sound the lid began to rise. Both father and son stepped back as the chest opened by itself. Inside lay not gold, not silver, but a smooth sphere the size of a melon. It pulsed with light, shifting between colors like the northern sky. The glow lit their faces, casting shadows across the broken walls. Leaf stared in awe. "It is beautiful." Hakon reached out carefully, his rough hand trembling. The sphere was warm to the touch, warmer than any stone should be. He lifted it gently, and it hummed softly, as if alive. Beneath it lay a roll of parchment, tied with faded leather. Hakon set the sphere aside and picked up the parchment. The leather strap broke easily, and he unrolled it on the dusty floor. His eyes widened at what he saw. It was a map. But not like any map of rivers, forests, or mountains he had ever seen. The lines were strange, the drawings unfamiliar. Instead of land, it showed patterns of stars, connected by faint path circles marked certain places, and at the very edge was a symbol matching the markings on the chest. Leaf leaned over it, his voice filled with wonder. "Father, it is a map of the sky." "Yes," Hakon said quietly. "And more than that. It shows places beyond what our eyes can see. These are not lands we can walk to. These are places above us, places in the heavens." The boy's imagination raced. "Does that mean the chest came from the heavens too? Did the gods place it here?" Hakon looked at the glowing sphere and felt a weight in his chest. He was not quick to call everything the work of gods. But he could not explain what lay before him. "I do not know, my son. But I know this. Whoever placed this here wanted it hidden. And now it has been found by us." They sat in silence, staring at the map and the sphere. Outside, the villagers' laughter carried faintly through the air, but inside the cabin was a world apart. Father and son were alone with something far greater than a pile of rotten wood. Leaf spoke again, his voice firm. "We must follow the map, Father. It may lead to something greater. Perhaps this is why you bought the cabin. Perhaps it was meant for us." Hakon studied his son, seeing the fire in his young eyes. He thought of the long winters they had suffered, the empty fields, the hunger that had worn them down. Could this discovery truly be a path to something more? At last he nodded. "Yes, Leaf. We will follow it. But we must be wise. We will not rush. We will prepare, gather food, and plan. This map could lead us to danger as well as fortune. But whatever lies ahead, we will face it together. Leif smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had always admired his father's strength and calm spirit. Now he felt as though they were not only father and son, but partners in a great quest. The sphere pulsed again, brighter than before, as if agreeing with their decision. The cabin, once nothing more than a ruin, now felt alive with energy. Hakon placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Remember this day, my son. This is the day our path changed. 3 coins bought us a rotting cabin, but inside it we found a door to the unknown. And we will step through that door together." Leif nodded. "I will remember, father." The two of them carefully gathered the sphere and the map. They left the chest behind, for its purpose had already been fulfilled. Outside, the cold wind swept across the village, but in their hearts burned a warmth stronger than any fire. Neither of them could yet know where the map would lead, or what trials they would face. But both father and son understood that their lives would never again be simple. The cabin had given them a secret worth more than gold, and the journey had only just begun. The cabin felt different after the chest was opened. What had once been a broken shelter now seemed to carry the weight of hidden history. The glowing sphere sat wrapped in cloth on a table Hakon had repaired, while the map lay carefully rolled and tied again. Yet both father and son could not stop glancing at them as if they feared the objects might vanish when they looked away. Leif especially was restless. He moved from corner to corner inside the cabin, searching the shadows for more secrets. "If there was one chest, maybe there are more," he whispered excitedly. Hakon watched him with a faint smile. He admired the boy's spirit, but he also knew curiosity could lead to danger. "Be patient, Leif. We already uncovered something beyond imagination. Let us learn what this chest truly means before we chase shadows." But Leif was not ready to sit still. He pulled up floorboards, pushed aside broken planks, and tapped on walls. Hakon sighed but let him search. After all, sometimes a child's eyes saw things adults missed. As Leif explored, Hakon studied the chest again. Its surface no longer glowed, but the strange markings remained sharp as if they had been carved yesterday. He ran his fingers across them, feeling not simple grooves but a smoothness unlike any tool-made mark. They reminded him of the stars he had seen during long voyages at sea, bright and eternal. He whispered to himself, "This is not the work of our hands." Just then, Leif cried out, "Father, come quickly." Hakon stood and crossed the cabin. Leif was kneeling by the wall, brushing away dirt with his small hands. At first Hakon saw nothing, but then he noticed faint lines cut into the wood. They were the same kind of markings that covered the chest. "They are everywhere," Leif said, his voice filled with awe. "The walls have the same signs. We did not see them yesterday because the light was poor." Hakon leaned closer. He saw that the cabin's walls were not only rotted wood. Beneath the surface, carved deep into hidden beams, were the same star-like patterns. The cabin itself was marked, as though the chest had not been placed here by chance. "This place was chosen," Hakon murmured. Leif's eyes widened. "Do you think the chest belongs to the cabin?" "Perhaps the cabin was built to protect it," Hakon said. "Perhaps long ago, someone knew this land was safe, and they hid the chest here, covering it with a common house so no one would look too closely." The boy nodded, his mind racing with stories of hidden guardians and lost travelers. But Hakon felt a heavier truth pressing on him. If the cabin itself was part of the secret, then their discovery was far greater than he had thought. Hakon returned to the chest, kneeling beside it once more. The lid remained open, revealing its empty base where the sphere and map had rested. He tapped on the inside with his knuckles. A hollow sound echoed faintly. Leaf crouched beside him. It is not solid. Maybe there is another compartment. They searched carefully, running fingers along the edges until Leaf found a small ridge. He pressed it, and a thin panel shifted, sliding open with a soft click. Both gasped. Inside the hidden compartment lay strange tools, slender rods of metal and small crystal-like stones that shimmered even in the dim cabin light. They were nothing like Viking weapons or farming tools. They were too smooth, too perfect, as if shaped by hands or machines unknown to them. Leaf picked up one of the rods. It was light but strong, with a faint hum that tickled his fingers. "What are these, father?" Hakon frowned deeply. "They are not of our people." "I cannot say. But I know they are not toys. Handle them with care." He lifted one of the crystals, holding it up to the light streaming through a crack in the roof. Inside the stone swirled tiny lights, like stars trapped within glass. Hakon felt a chill run through him. This was not the craft of any blacksmith he had known. Leaf whispered, "Do you think they came from the heavens too, like the map?" Hakon hesitated before answering. "Perhaps. Or perhaps from lands so far away that we have never seen their like. Whatever the truth, we must protect them. If the villagers knew, they would fight to take them. And not only them. Treasures such as these bring danger as well as fortune." The boy nodded solemnly. He understood enough to keep quiet. Together, they carefully placed the tools and crystals back into the hidden compartment, sealing it again. For now, only the map and the sphere remained in their keeping. As the day darkened into evening, Hakon sat on the cabin's step, staring at the sky. Leaf sat beside him, hugging his knees. Stars began to appear one by one, bright against the black night. "Look there," Hakon said, pointing. "Do you see that cluster of 3 stars close together?" "Yes, father. That same cluster is on the map. These stars guide us. They show that the map is true, not just the drawings of a dreamer." Leaf's eyes widened as he saw the connection. "Then the map is real. It can take us to the places it shows." Hakon nodded slowly. "But the journey will not be simple. It may take us beyond anything we know. We must be strong, and we must be ready." The boy smiled bravely. "I am ready, father. Whatever waits for us, I will go with you." Hakon placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Good. Because this path is no longer only mine. It belongs to us both." The two sat in silence, watching the stars. Neither spoke of the chest or the tools again that night, but both felt the weight of what they had discovered. The cabin had given them not only shelter but a mystery greater than their village could imagine. The chest, though quiet now, seemed to breathe with secrets. It had opened once, revealing its wonders. Who could say what else it might reveal in time? Hakon knew that they had only touched the edge of something vast. The laughter of the villagers had long faded. The night air was still. Father and son sat close, their hearts steady with the knowledge that their lives had turned toward a road unknown. The mysterious chest was no longer just an object. It was a key, and it had already begun to unlock a future far beyond their world. And deep inside, Hakon felt a truth forming like a spark. The 3 coins he had spent on a rotting cabin were not wasted. They were the price of destiny. The cabin was quiet that morning. A thin mist curled outside, drifting between the trees, while inside the small fire Hakon had built sent soft smoke into the air. Leaf sat near the hearth with the glowing sphere wrapped in cloth beside him. He kept staring at it as though the light would whisper secrets if he looked long enough. Hakon, however, had spread the map across the repaired table, his rough hands holding the edges flat. The parchment felt older than any scroll he had seen before. The ink was dark and clear, showing no sign of fading even though the leather strap that had held it had crumbled at a touch. Hakon studied the strange lines and circles again. They were not rivers or hills, not the paths of men or ships. They were stars, scattered across the page with careful accuracy. Leif came closer, his eyes shining. "Father, it is a map of the sky, is it not?" "Yes," Hakon replied, tracing one of the lines with his finger. "But it is more than that. See how these stars are joined by lines? These are paths. And these circles mark certain places. This map is not only of the heavens. It is a guide." Leif leaned over, following his father's hand. "A guide to where?" "That is what we must learn," Hakon said. The boy's heart beat faster. His imagination filled with images of hidden valleys, secret treasures, and forgotten lands. "Can it take us to riches, father? To gold and silver?" Hakon looked at him steadily. "Perhaps. But remember, riches are not always coins. Knowledge is a treasure too. Tools stronger than iron, wisdom greater than a king's words. What we hold may be worth more than gold." Leif nodded, trying to appear serious like his father, though excitement still danced in his eyes. They studied the map together for hours. Hakon compared the patterns with the stars he remembered from long voyages. Slowly, he began to recognize some of the clusters. One in particular caught his eye, 3 stars close together in a line. He had pointed them out to Leif the night before, and now he found them drawn carefully on the map. From that cluster, a path stretched outward toward one of the circles. "There," Hakon said firmly. "That is where we must go first. The map shows a path leading from the 3 stars to something marked here." Leif frowned slightly. "But father, how can we travel to the sky? We cannot fly." Hakon gave a small smile. "No, we cannot. But perhaps this map is not only of the sky above but of lands below those same stars. Our ancestors often used the heavens to guide them across seas. This could be the same, only on a greater scale. The circle might mark a place on our world that lies beneath those stars." The boy's face brightened. "Then we can follow it." Hakon nodded. "Yes, though it will not be easy. The place lies far from here. We must prepare food, weapons, and clothing. And we must not tell anyone. If the villagers knew of this map, they would fight for it. Some would seek to claim it for themselves, even if it cost us dearly." Leif pressed his lips together and gave a firm nod. "I will keep it secret." As they planned, a strange thing happened. The sphere lying wrapped in cloth began to glow softly again. Leif noticed it first. He hurried to unwrap it, and the cabin filled with a pale light. The sphere pulsed gently as though it had awakened. Then, without warning, lines of light stretched from it onto the table, forming shapes above the map. Both father and son gasped. The light created a pattern in the air, hovering just above the parchment. It was the same pattern as the map, but brighter, clearer, alive. The stars shone as tiny sparks, and the paths glimmered like threads of fire. The marked circles glowed strongest of all. Leif whispered in awe. "It is showing us the map in the air. Like magic." Hakon's heart raced. He had seen storms at sea, he had seen fire dance across the sky, but nothing like this. The sphere was not magic as their people knew it. It was something else, something beyond their world. The light shifted, and one circle glowed brighter than the rest. Slowly, a line extended from it down to the parchment, pointing to the first destination. Hakon understood at once. The sphere was not only a treasure. It was a guide. "It wants us to go there," Hakon said softly. Leif turned to him with shining eyes. "Then we must. The sphere is helping us. It is showing the way." Hakon breathed deeply. He felt the weight of the moment pressing upon him. A poor man had bought a rotting cabin for 3 coins. Now he held in his hands a map from the heavens and a guide that seemed to know his path. It was more than chance. It was fate. He rolled the parchment carefully, wrapping it in cloth, and placed the sphere gently beside it. "We will go, Leif. But first, we must prepare. This journey may take us far from home. We may face storms, hunger, and danger. But if this map leads to what I believe, then the reward will be greater than anything our people have ever known." Leif's face glowed with courage. "I am ready, father. I will not be afraid." Hakon put a hand on his son's shoulder. "I know you are brave. But bravery is more than facing fear. It is also patience and wisdom. Promise me you will listen, learn, and walk carefully." "I promise," Leif said firmly. The sphere's light slowly dimmed, fading until it was once again only a smooth glowing stone. The cabin returned to its dim firelight, but the air still hummed with a strange energy. That night, father and son lay on their bedding, but neither could rest. Both stared at the roof where the stars shone faintly through the holes. The same stars drawn on the map. The same stars that now called to them. Hakon thought of the villagers who had mocked him. They saw only a fool who wasted 3 coins. But soon, he and his son would walk a path none of them could imagine. He did not know what waited at the end, but he felt certain it would be more than treasure. It would be a legacy. Leif, lying beside him, whispered into the dark. "Father, when we follow the map, will it change our lives forever?" "Yes, my son," Hakon replied quietly. "It already has." The morning came with a red sun rising over the snowy hills. Frost clung to the branches, and the cold air stung the skin. Hakon stood outside the cabin, sharpening his axe against a flat stone. His breath came out in white clouds as he worked slowly and carefully. Leif came out with a bundle of rope and sacks on his back, his small arms straining under the weight. "Is this enough food, father?" Leif asked. Hakon looked at the sacks. Inside were smoked fish, dried meat, and hard bread. It was not much, but it was all they could carry. "It will be enough to begin," Hakon said. "We will hunt and gather on the way." Leif set the bundle down and stretched his arms. "How far do you think the map will take us?" Hakon did not answer at once. He turned his eyes to the sky, where the cluster of 3 stars they had seen now faintly lingered, fading in the morning light. "Far," he said at last. "Farther than you have ever walked. But not so far that we cannot reach it if we keep our courage strong." The villagers were already awake, tending fires and calling to their animals. Some noticed Hakon and Leif preparing for travel and laughed among themselves. "The fool and his boy are leaving to chase ghosts," one man muttered. Another shook his head. "He spent 3 coins for a cabin, and now he spends his days walking in circles." Hakon heard their words but did not answer. He strapped his axe across his back, tied the sphere and the map securely in a sack, and nodded to his son. "It is time." They left the village without ceremony. The path took them first through the forest, where the tall pines stood silent and the ground was thick with frost. Leif walked quickly, his eyes sharp for signs of deer or birds. Hakon walked with steady steps, his senses alert to every sound. Hours passed. The forest grew darker as clouds covered the sun. At last, they stopped near a stream, breaking their bread and eating in silence. Leaf looked at his father and asked, "Do you think anyone will follow us?" Hakon shook his head. "No one believes what we carry is real. They think we are chasing dreams. That will keep us safe, at least for now." Leaf was glad to hear it, but his heart still raced with the thrill of their secret. He kept glancing at the sack where the sphere lay hidden, wondering if it would glow again. When night fell, they made camp beside a ridge of stone. Hakon built a small fire, and Leaf curled beside it, wrapping himself in a rough blanket. Above them, the sky stretched wide, filled with countless stars. Leaf pointed at the familiar cluster of 3. "There, father. The same stars from the map." Hakon nodded. "They will guide us. Each night we will walk under them, and each morning we will look for the signs they point to." Leaf's voice dropped low. "Do you think the circle on the map is a hidden place of gold?" "Perhaps," Hakon said. "But remember what I told you. Gold fades. Tools break. But knowledge lasts. I believe this map leads to something greater than wealth. Something left for those who are willing to search." The fire crackled, and Leaf slowly drifted into sleep, but Hakon remained awake. His mind was heavy with thought. He had no proof of what lay ahead, only faith in the map and the sphere. Yet deep in his heart, he felt certain that their journey was no mistake. The next day their path grew harder. They climbed rocky slopes where loose stones rolled under their feet. The wind grew sharp, biting through their clothes. Still, they pressed on. Hakon led the way, cutting branches when the thorns grew thick. Leaf carried the sacks without complaint, though his legs ached with every step. By the third day, they reached the edge of the forest and looked down into a wide valley. Rivers cut across it like silver threads, and in the distance rose dark mountains crowned with snow. Hakon studied the stars again that night and compared them to the map. The glowing circle lay somewhere near those mountains. "It is close," he said firmly. "Not a day's walk, but near enough that we can reach it with strength." Leaf's eyes shone with excitement. "Then soon we will see what it hides." But the path to the mountains was not free of danger. On the fourth day, as they crossed a narrow gorge, they heard the howl of wolves. Leaf gripped his stick tightly, his heart pounding. The shadows moved among the rocks, and yellow eyes glinted in the dark. Hakon stepped forward, holding his axe firmly. The largest wolf crept closer, its teeth bared. The pack circled slowly. Hakon raised his voice, deep and strong. "Stay close to me, Leaf." When the first wolf leapt, Hakon swung his axe. The blade struck with a sharp sound, and the beast fell back. The others hesitated, growling. Leaf waved his stick, shouting with all the strength in his small lungs. The wolves, unwilling to face the man's axe and the boy's fire, retreated into the shadows. Leaf's knees trembled, but his eyes blazed with pride. "We scared them away." Hakon smiled faintly. "We stood our ground. That is the way of survival." They pressed onward, and by the fifth night, they reached the base of the mountains. The air grew thin and colder, but the stars above seemed brighter. The sphere in their sack pulsed faintly, as if answering the stars. Leaf whispered, "It is guiding us again." "Yes," Hakon said. "Tomorrow, we climb." That night they slept beneath the open sky, the mountains looming like dark giants above them. Leaf dreamed of golden halls and hidden doors. Hakon dreamed of voices whispering in languages he did not know. When dawn came, they rose together, ready for what awaited. Each step had tested their strength, but they had not turned back. The map had led them across forest, valley, and danger, and now it called them to the mountains. Hakon looked at his son with pride. The journey has only begun, Leif. What lies ahead will decide our fate. But already we have proven that no treasure is found without hardship. Leif straightened his back and smiled. I am not afraid, father. Whatever waits, we will face it together. The rising sun cast its light upon them as they began to climb the mountain path, carrying with them the secret of the cabin, the map of the stars, and the courage of their bond. The journey had begun, and nothing would stop them now. The mountain air was sharp and cold, but the rising sun painted the snowy peaks in gold. Hakon and Leif climbed slowly, their boots crunching on stone and ice. Each step demanded strength, yet they pushed forward without fear. The sack on Hakon's back was heavier than before, not because of the food or rope, but because the strange sphere inside had begun to glow brighter. It pulsed with light, guiding their way like a lantern. Leif kept his eyes on the glowing sack. Father, it is stronger now. It wants us to follow. Hakon nodded. Yes. The mountains hold the secret. We are close. The path wound upward through narrow cliffs. Sometimes they had to pull themselves by roots and rocks. The wind roared between the peaks, and snowflakes drifted down. Hours passed, but the light of the sphere never dimmed. Instead, it grew stronger with every turn of the path. At last, they reached a high plateau. Before them stood a wall of stone covered in ice and vines. It looked like part of the mountain, but something about it felt different. The surface was too smooth, and faint markings shone beneath the ice. Leif stared in wonder. It is not a wall of nature. Someone built this. Hakon stepped forward, brushing away the frost with his hand. Strange symbols appeared, the same as those carved on the chest they had found in the cabin. He placed the sphere against the stone. The sphere flared with light. The ground rumbled, and the wall trembled as cracks spread across the surface. A hidden door of stone groaned and slowly slid open, revealing a dark passage beyond. Leif's eyes widened. It opened for us. Hakon's voice was low with awe. It was waiting for us. Together they stepped inside. The air was cool and dry, untouched by time. Their footsteps echoed in the long hallway. Strange carvings lined the walls, showing ships sailing through skies filled with stars, men and women standing beside beings that did not look human, and tools that shone like fire. Leif touched one of the carvings with his fingers. Father, these are not stories of our people. They are something greater. Hakon's heart pounded. He felt as if they were walking into a place meant for a world beyond their own. The passage opened into a vast chamber. It was filled with stone pillars and golden light that came not from torches, but from glowing crystals set in the walls. At the center stood a great chest made of black stone, larger than any they had ever seen. Leif whispered, "Is this the treasure?" Hakon approached slowly. The chest was carved with the same symbols as the sphere and the map. He placed his hand on the lid. It was warm to the touch, as if alive. With effort, he lifted it open. Inside lay objects unlike anything from their village. There were smooth tools of shining metal, stones that glowed with steady light, and scrolls of strange material that did not crumble with age. Among them were gemstones larger than a fist, their colors bright as fire and sea. Leif gasped. It is worth more than anything. This could feed the whole village for 100 years. Hakon looked deeper. At the very bottom of the chest was a strange device shaped like a circle with rings of silver. He lifted it carefully, and as he did, the sphere in his sack pulsed with new energy. The circle lit up, casting beams of light across the chamber. The beams struck the walls, and suddenly the carvings seemed to move. Ships lifted into the skies, stars burned bright, and great halls appeared before their eyes. It was as if the chamber had become alive, telling the story of an ancient people. Leaf stood frozen. It is showing us the past. Hakon's eyes filled with wonder. Or perhaps the future. The visions faded slowly, but the light remained in the circle. Hakon understood that this was more than treasure. It was knowledge, power, and history. Whoever had hidden it had done so to keep it safe until someone brave enough discovered it. Leaf clutched his father's arm. We must take it home. The others will not believe us, but if they see this, they will know. Hakon nodded. Yes. But we must be careful. This treasure is more than gold. If used with greed, it could bring ruin. But if used with wisdom, it could lift our people into greatness. They filled their sacks with some of the gemstones, the glowing stones, and the circle of light. They left behind what they could not carry, knowing the chamber would remain hidden for ages to come. As they stepped out of the vault, the stone door closed behind them with a deep sound. The mountain seemed silent again, but the weight of their discovery filled their hearts. Leaf looked up at the sky where the 3 stars shone bright. We followed them, and they gave us this. Hakon placed a hand on his son's shoulder. No, Leaf. It was not the stars alone. It was our courage, our faith, and our will to seek. That is what opened the path. They began the long descent from the mountains, carrying more than riches. They carried a secret that could change their lives and the lives of all who lived in their land. The wind was cold, but their hearts burned with fire. That night, as they camped by a stream at the foot of the mountain, Leaf held one of the glowing stones in his hands. Its light cast a warm glow on his young face. Do you think the village will believe us? Hakon smiled, his eyes steady. At first, they will laugh, as they always do. But when they see the truth, their laughter will turn to silence. Then they will know that value is not in what is seen, but in what is hidden and discovered. Leaf leaned against his father, comforted by his words. The journey had been long and dangerous, but it had given them something far greater than wealth. It had given them proof that even the poorest man with the smallest chance could uncover greatness if he dared to try. The stream sang softly, and the stars glittered above. Father and son rested, knowing that their return to the village would mark the beginning of a new chapter. They had found treasure, yes, but they had also found legacy. And that was worth more than all the coins in the world. The sun rose over the village, painting the rooftops in gold. Hakon and Leaf approached the settlement, carrying the treasure carefully in their sacks. Their clothes were worn from the journey, and their boots were scuffed from climbing mountains, but their spirits were strong. They had discovered something that no villager had ever imagined, a secret hidden for generations, and now it belonged to them. The villagers noticed them as they entered. Some laughed at the sight of the poor Viking and his boy, thinking they were tired travelers returning from a foolish journey. Others whispered to each other, curious but cautious. Hakon and Leaf did not speak immediately. They walked through the streets, their eyes on the people who had doubted them. Leaf looked at his father and asked quietly, "Do you think they will believe us?" Hakon smiled faintly. "Let us show them first, then they will know." They stopped in the village square, where most of the villagers had gathered. Hakon placed one of the glowing stones on the ground. It pulsed softly, casting warm light across the cobblestones. The villagers gasped. Some stepped back, afraid. Others leaned forward, mesmerized by the glow. Leaf opened a sack and took out one of the gemstones. It reflected sunlight, scattering colors across the faces of the villagers. Children reached out their hands in wonder, and even the older men and women stared silently. "This is what we found," Hakon said. His voice was calm but carried authority. "Not in the lands you walk every day, not in the markets, but in a hidden place protected by the mountains. We followed the stars, and they led us here. These objects are ancient, older than our village. They are tools, knowledge, and treasures meant for those who seek with courage and wisdom." A murmur went through the crowd. Some villagers shook their heads, still unwilling to believe, but the glow of the stones and the sphere was undeniable. Hakon placed the glowing circle at the center. It pulsed stronger than the other stones, and suddenly a beam of light stretched into the sky, like a signal to the heavens. Leif stepped forward. "It is real. The cabin was not worthless. It hid all of this." One elder spoke. 3 coins for a cabin, and yet it brought such wonders? I never believed such a thing was possible." Hakon nodded. "Many do not see value where it is hidden. This journey was not for gold alone. It was for knowledge, for discovery, and for the courage to follow the unknown. We have learned that even the smallest choice, the smallest coin, can lead to greatness." The villagers were silent, feeling the weight of his words. Children ran to touch the glowing stones, laughing in delight. Women whispered to each other about the strange shapes and the light that seemed almost alive. The village men looked at Hakon and Leif with new respect. They had mocked him before, but now they understood the power of curiosity and courage. Hakon turned to his son. "Leif, you have been brave, patient, and careful. You have learned well. Today, our village will see the fruits of our journey. Tomorrow, we will use this knowledge to make life better for everyone." Leif smiled, pride glowing in his young eyes. "Father, what will we do first?" Hakon thought for a moment. "We will start with the tools and the stones. They are not only treasure. They are gifts that can build stronger homes, sharper tools, and brighter lights for every household. We will teach the villagers how to use them wisely. That is the true value of what we found." Over the following days, Hakon and Leif worked with the villagers. They showed them how the glowing stones could light homes at night without fire. They demonstrated tools that were lighter, sharper, and stronger than anything used before. The villagers learned quickly, marveling at the strength and beauty of the artifacts. The children were especially excited. They ran from house to house, carrying small stones that glowed in their hands. The village, once dull and ordinary, began to shine with light and hope. Even the elders admitted that they had never seen such change. One day, Hakon climbed the hill overlooking the village. He watched the people working together, their faces bright with curiosity and joy. He felt a deep pride. The cabin he had bought for 3 coins had given more than treasure. It had given opportunity, knowledge, and hope. Leif joined him on the hill, looking out over the village. "Father, do you think others will try to find places like this?" Hakon nodded. "Yes, but that is not our concern. What matters is what we have done. We have shown that courage, patience, and wisdom are more powerful than strength alone. Others may follow, but our legacy is here, in the lives we have changed and the light we have brought." The boy looked at the glowing stones he still carried in his sack. "It feels like the cabin was meant for us." Hakon smiled. It was. And now we must make sure that what we found is used for good. Wealth is nothing if it does not help others. Knowledge and courage, however, can change the world. The villagers began to build new homes using the tools they had discovered. The old cabins were repaired and made stronger. The young men learned new ways to hunt and craft. The women created brighter fires and safer shelters. Even the village children learned to read some of the ancient symbols carved on the stones. The change was slow but steady, and it filled Hakon with satisfaction. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Hakon and Leif sat outside the cabin that had started it all. The building was still small and broken, but it had become a symbol. Every villager knew the story now: a poor man who bought a rotting cabin for 3 coins, a boy who followed him faithfully, and a treasure hidden for centuries that changed everything. Leif leaned against his father. "Father, will we go on another journey like this?" Hakon looked at him with a quiet smile. "Perhaps. But remember, every journey begins with a choice, and every choice carries responsibility. The greatest treasures are not always found in mountains or chests. Sometimes they are found in courage, knowledge, and the way we use what we discover." The boy nodded, understanding more than his years could explain. "I will remember, father." Hakon placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Good. You have learned well. Today we live with what we have discovered, and tomorrow we will continue to teach and share. The cabin gave us the path, and now it gives us legacy." That night, as stars filled the sky, Hakon and Leif looked upward. The 3 bright stars that had guided them through mountains and valleys shone clearly above. The map had led them true, but the journey had done more than lead them to treasure. It had taught them the strength of patience, courage, and wisdom. The village slept peacefully under the glow of the stones. The people had learned that even the smallest actions could lead to greatness. The cabin that was once broken, the coins spent without hope, and the secret chest had all become part of a story that would be told for generations. Hakon and Leif stood together, father and son, knowing that they had changed more than their own lives. They had changed the lives of everyone around them. And in that moment, they understood the greatest treasure was not gold or gems, but the legacy of knowledge, courage, and hope that they had brought to the village. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the promise of future journeys. The cabin remained, a symbol of humble beginnings. And under the stars, the village shone brighter than ever before. Hakon turned to Leif, his voice calm and full of pride. "Remember this, son. Greatness can come from small beginnings. Courage can uncover secrets, and wisdom can make them shine. That is the legacy of the Vikings." Leif smiled, feeling the truth of his father's words. "I will never forget, father. We will carry it always." Together, they watched the village, the mountains, and the stars, knowing that their adventure had ended, but the legacy they had built would last forever.